welcome to Rasta Chats, where we have a discussion about our week's topic. I'm with Paul Higgins today, who was actually my supervisor when I was in graduate school for my internship. Anyways, I've been talking this week about the idea that we don't just avoid pain, we waste it, and wanted to explore more of that in a real conversation. So, kind of what's your kind of natural reaction when something comes up that's painful?
Well, hey Scott, thanks for inviting me on. When you sent me the message about this, I was really sort of intrigued by it. On the surface level, I think you know, suffering and pain. It's something we as humans just have to go through. It's inevitable in life and that kind of stuff. Um, but then I'm a big runner and into working out and all that kind of stuff. One of the things that like I've trained my body is that people are like, oh, you work out so much, you should get a massage. And I'm like, loosen up your muscles. And I was like, well, if I don't get a massage, then my body doesn't know what comfort is of suffering. So it's always in this state of like tenseness and stuff like that. And so I don't need like, so I mean, obviously extreme circumstances where I'm like truly injured, but obviously the day to day working out and that kind of stuff is it's one of those things that just like it's there, and I really have a deep philosophy about like just it's it's something you just have to go through, and I really tend to lean with that, definitely with suffering is the resiliency kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like you're, trying to use it, use the discomfort, in a good way, or are you able to kind of sit with it, being older and in the counseling profession and stuff? Do you feel like you're more able to sit with, discomfort and sit with painful emotions, or?
Sure. Yeah, I do. I mean, obviously, no one with painful emotions for a long period of time is, hence why you need to seek, help. Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with being in that uncomfortable state for some time, and working through with a counselor or other professionals to find, a way through it, through discomfort and building spinning into a positive. I mean, that's what I've always, have done in my life is just in personal experiences, and whether it was, relationships and divorce or other aspects of my life, or physical fitness challenges like running marathons. And I just completed running 1,000 days in a row 2 days ago, and it's just like, what? There's days that just absolutely suck. But it's like, what? But it's so many better days ahead, on finding through it, and just really trying to keep your head up in the fog, and the fog of suffering, I guess, if that's the way to put it, and get where you need to go.
Hey, what's a time when something, hard, or suffering, or something you didn't want, kind of came to you, and it led to something good on the other side of it?
Um, there's a handful of things, that have happened to me, and, in my life. I mean, personal experience, I don't want to get too deep into it, but divorce sucks. I mean, absolutely, I've gone through it, and but it has led to, you know, a deeper relationship with my children, which sometimes you get monotony in a relationship, and it's oh, the nuclear family, this kind of thing, that kind of thing, and then the kids see it from a different angle, and that kind of stuff. I've always physically skirted with levels of higher cholesterol, and I just started running, for fun, with um, just to get out and burn off some steam and clear my head every morning and that kind of stuff, and it led to you know, lower cholesterol levels. And it's just like, you know what? If, and my focus on the running thing is like ultimately when I just kept going and going and going, I'm like, let's just do this for 365 days. And then it's like, all right, just keep on going. Well, my cholesterol levels came down because I'm trying to treat it holistically. My mental clarity is there. It helped me, dealing with personal issues. And it's become inspirational to others. Like people are like, "Well, how have you done it for so long?" Well, it started with running a half mile and mile and that kind of stuff. But it's really showing up every day and inspiring others. And the other thing is that think about like the brain chemistry, right? Like these kind of things, like you're getting a dopamine hit, like a healthy dopamine hit, a healthy, endorphins, serotonin, like all the good brain chemicals are rolling, from this. And I ultimately had said to myself, I was like, Paul, if you can't dedicate at least 10 minutes a day to your physical fitness, which ultimately is your personal well being, you've lost your mind. And, and through difficult times, through suffering, you do it. And then people are like, well, the anti runners and that kind of stuff, like, that is just painful. That's just suffering. And it's like, well, sometimes you can find good things and good, joy in suffering. If you want to label it as that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. You almost can't have the appreciation or the joy that you have in a lot of cases without the suffering. Uh, that's those are really good examples. I like that. I feel like you have a deeper connection with your kids than you might have had otherwise because of the adversity. Um, so a lot of times, one of the things, the areas that we talk about with suffering, and particularly suffering that we don't want, is anger. I've struggled with that in my personal life, and to be on the other side of it. But what do you think that anger is trying to do when it's knocking?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of angles to look at it with from anger, right? I mean, ultimately, I think it triggers fight or flight. I mean, right off the bat, it's what's controllable, what's leading to anxiety, which are all controlling things, and that kind of stuff. Because if you could control everything and you do all these kind of things, I mean, would you really have anger, right? I mean, it's like you can manipulate every situation to make it perfect for yours. You wouldn't. I don't think you would experience anger. If you were godly, in the fact of like, I don't want this in the world happening, so we're gonna just do that and that kind of stuff. But obviously, we can't get to that level. We're doing all that kind of stuff, but you know what? It's an adrenaline. Anger is an adrenaline rush. So how do we manage our adrenaline? And control is a stress hormone. So it's like how are we managing that and stuff like that. So it's it's a lot. And we've all dealt with anger, and I've had anger in my life, and it's one of those kind of things that like what am I controlling? What can I control? How am I going to respond to this? And all that kind of stuff. And so it's just, um, and it goes back to that fight or flight mentality of like, am I going to stay in this and fight it? It's going to lead to anger, or am I going to back off on it, or so.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think? Someone that's still under struggling with anger, specifically like reactivity. Um, what do you think? You already kind of mentioned it, right, with control. But what's going on underneath that? A lot of times, just sticking with the anger, like that's hard to be compassionate with. It's hard to be soft with. It's hard to have a good relationship with that just that top part of the anger. So like underneath that, what do you think's underneath that tip of that iceberg of anger?
You know what? I mean, a story comes to mind with a student at work, and he is a very angry kid. His parents are going through a divorce, which is not helping the situation. There's dysfunctional parenting, um, but he also has been diagnosed with, like, he's a product of his environment, but he doesn't know that yet. He hasn't accepted it yet, but it's coming out in anger. Life's not fair, this thing and that thing. So he hasn't come to acceptance. But he also was recently diagnosed with diabetes, and he has to take insulin shots. Like, I mean, full diabetic, can't be managed any other way. And so the nurse at the school monitors his levels and, like, up, send him down. He's got to take a shot, and he just, like, he's like, it's why me, why this kind of stuff. And it's just there's so many things that this little kid can't control that has led to the anger. And it's just like he just wants to have some control, some aspect of his life, and that's where his anger is coming out. I mean, he throws fights, punches windows, kicks desks, all that kind of stuff. But it really is just, you know and it's because he's in an uncontrollable state, that he doesn't have control to it. um and it's my son has food allergies, and he has gone through similar things like that. And it's just like, the world's unfair to him. Like, why does my sister get to have McDonald's, but I can't? And I'm like, well, that's just the way you were made. But the thing is not having McDonald's is actually better for you. But when you're, now he's 13, but when you're 8, 10, 12, 13, you're at birthday parties and you're seeing the kids have, McDonald's, and you're like, well, I want that. And, like, well, I can't. We bring our own special food for him that's way healthier, for him. But overall, I mean, he's his anger has decreased because he's become more accepting of it and worked through with counseling and that kind of stuff. Um, so
Yeah, man, that makes sense. I think a lot of times underneath that anger, especially with someone that's kicking and flipping over tables, and people see all of that. They see the chaos, the chaotic behavior, but just the level of pain underneath it.
mhm.
What changes with somebody, whether in your personal life or or in your practice, whenever you start to meet that suffering part of it, and you meet it with compassion. Like, you stop pushing away your anger and stop, putting a bottle on it, or putting a bottle on it, putting it in a bottle. Uh, what changes whenever you start meeting that suffering with compassion?
That's a hard one, but I think it's there's got to be, I think it's got to be rooted in motivation. You got to be motivated to prevent this, to prevent what you can prevent, or motivated to relieve what you can relieve. And where is that coming from? To each person's case, it's a little different. And it's just like it's like, I just use my son, just watching him go through his process and stuff like that. Motivation, keep going to counseling, keep doing this kind, look for acceptance, be motivated to it, that you can, that saying, hey, I can go to McDonald's with my sister and not get angry anymore. Like, I want to get to a place where I can go and be with my friends and family and stuff like that, and not be like, what, this sucks, this is angry, and just get so angry that you just work through it, and it becomes, to a point of acceptance, um, of it. Um, and the compassion part, I mean, it's just, it is, I don't know. It's just one of those things that, like, it really, I think I'm just speaking from my personal example. Like, it's like more on my side with my kid is just like, being compassionate. Like I understand he's angry and that kind of stuff. It's so on the outside of it, looking in, and just not, responding with him. But, um, but internally, I mean, it's, I don't know. That's a tough one to answer. Um,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, it,
I hear you. Yeah, kind of what role I guess does compassion play in that, in that motivation, resiliency and all of that. That's a tough resiliency is a tough thing, and hanging in there uh, with the motivation through human failings is a difficult
well,
thing.
and so,
What role does compassion play in that?
yeah, and so it's actually, so a professor of mine, a mentor down at TCU, Dr. Taylor, she did a lot of research. She got some grants on resiliency, and she really wanted to like write books and literature about resiliency. And so she had a grant that she bought like 100 disposable cameras and gave it to a variety of people, all walks of life, and said, "Go take pictures of what you think is resilient." And so she went around, and so this is, I mean, I'm sure I need to talk to her again, but like to see what AI could help her with. But she went back and she developed all those photographs. She was a photographer, on the side for a hobby and, passion. And she could not link what these photographs were taking. Like it could be a tree, it could be their grandparent, it could be a smile on the face, it could be whatever it was, like, and all that kind of stuff. And she really felt that like resiliency, like, is not trainable, like, and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, if somebody never experiences pain or suffering, then like they're never going to be resilient. Like, but you have to have pain and suffering to be resilient. Like, it just, there's so many arguments about it, um, in regards to that, and so um, it's just, yeah. And so it was inconclusive to say the least. She never wrote her book about it, because like, she talked to me about personal stories, and that I shared. She, how did you get through this? Like, why? Like, I had a very traumatic experience when I moved down here, and everybody in my family was like, like, just move home. Texas is bad for you. The last time you were in Texas, you were run over by a boat. Now you have this traumatic experience. Get out of here. I'm like, no. I'm like, I have an opportunity of a lifetime to get a full scholarship to TCU and all expense paid, everything done. I'm like, no, I'm going to stick with it. Like, this is going to be, and, it opened up a million doors, and, got to meet you and a million other people. But that's like, those are the kind of things, is to stick with it and to stick through the suffering and that kind of stuff. And I think adversity at the end of the day deepens the feel of joy, the deal of the joy, the happiness. And, I'm not trying to glorify suffering, but but discomfort is discomfort's a powerful teacher, because it puts us in places we don't want to be. And we become instinctual about it, and we have to, battle back, and in ways that we've never thought we'd have to battle back, but we get there.
I guess the last thing really just with compassion, like, so with the traumatic thing that happened when you moved down here, one of the kind of recent things, what kind of role did compassion play for you in overcoming that? If you're able to answer that,
Passion to overcome it.
yeah, to go through the process of facing trauma in general, because I guess, or would it be easier to think about what it would look like without compassion? Because
I'm
I don't
I'm
think
pretty
very
raw.
far without
So I
compassion.
mean, I look at it as pretty raw. I don't like, I mean, compassion's a real thing. It's an important thing. and that kind of stuff. But I'm pretty raw with my emotions, and like it's like if it sucks, it sucks. You just got to go through the suck, versus looking at it from different more compassionate lenses and that kind of stuff, and looking for breaks and grace and other things like that. Um, that's just me.
Yeah, I guess I don't mean, I mean more like not necessarily taking it easier on yourself or looking for grace or for a break from it, but to relate to yourself in a way that's appropriate for someone who's going through that, and not meeting it with more negativity, more, I mean, you have to have
Oh,
some sort
okay,
of
I hear you.
taking, you have to have some sort of a softness in your relationship with yourself to go through something that hard, because if you're too harsh on yourself with that,
Sure, and that would be, what, and that I guess boils down to my faith, right? I do believe that there's a man upstairs, and and my faith may not look as conventional as other people's faith and that kind of stuff. Is that the man upstairs would not put me in a position that I couldn't handle, or couldn't get through, and so it's like you're equipped with the skills inside your body to navigate this. Lean on family, lean on friends, try to keep your, as much positivity as possible going, to get through it. So that would be, I guess, my compassion towards myself in that regard.
yeah, that sounds like it. Yeah, it definitely sounds like it.
So thank you for reframing that.
Yeah, you bet. Like, and it's just bringing that. It's what role does uh, that grace that you get from your higher power, from your religion, what that love, that same kind of softness. Just for me, doubling down with harshness, doubling down with not. No, I'm not talking about not with grit is great.
Yeah,
We got to have grit in our lives,
yeah,
right? I'm talking about on a negatively balanced kind of way. Um, it feels like, and I made the point in one of the videos to say the only response that actually gets you anywhere when it comes to suffering or means anything when it comes to suffering is compassion. Like a desire, meaning not soft, meaning a desire to see that suffering not be the case. Like what what is how does that land for you if I just simplify it and say, it feels like the only rational response to suffering is compassion.
yeah. I agree with it. I mean, yeah, and the way you framed it before, like I said, I'm very disciplined, and I believe just going through it, but I also believe that compassion with yourself is a very important feature in getting through adversity and tough time, you know? And it's like, I think like my running thing, one of the best advices I got in my running journey and, running long distances is call yourself out. Know when, and this is the compassionate way to look at it, right? Know when you're ready to run and that kind of stuff, and you're having a great run. You're not questioning yourself at that point. You're like you're feeling good about adversity. You're doing that kind of stuff, but also call yourself out when it's like you're being lazy. But then also when you know what your body is on borderline injured or borderline injury, that you're not going to run your fastest mile, and saying, what, we're going to pull this back a little bit. You know what, and so we're going to still do the workout. We're going to do it, but we're going to modify it to the point where I don't get hurt, which is right compassion towards your body during running. So I guess in extreme things, it's like like a divorce or a death of a family member. It's like yeah, you don't feel well, you don't feel like, and it's not like, okay, that's normal. You got to normalize it yourself in that situation, and saying, well, I should feel this way, I should feel, well, you will get there, but you right now it's just that day that you need to give yourself some grace, and and be compassionate towards yourself. So
I think you can apply that to other stuff
Yeah.
for sure. You know, not not running yourself hard when you're dealing with an injury. It's like being in some sort of emotional, tight spot, and then being harsh on yourself. Like it's just going to exacerbate or make it worse. What do you what do you think it looks like for somebody? And we'll close with this. What do you think it looks for somebody to not waste their suffering? So the idea is that we don't throw it away. We're going to use everything. The like using everything on an animal kind of thing. Nothing goes to waste. So what does it look like not to waste suffering?
I mean, I think that's an excellent way to look at it. It's like don't. I mean, we're given everything in life, like each and every day, good and the bad, right? And human nature is to always take the good and think everything's wonderful, but also, learn from the suffering and learn from that. I think there's a lesson in everything, and I think there's a lesson to frame your mind and think about things and how you would go through it something again, but it's also a way to like wait, I've learned a lesson from this. I'm gonna next time I go forward, or when I go forward, I'm gonna use this and apply it to a different aspect, or whatever I do. So yeah, so it's just one of those things.
Yeah, man, I appreciate I appreciate that, and I think the running analogy, running kind of throughout it, was definitely helpful. Uh, you have anything before we close out?
No, I mean, it's what the whole. I appreciate you. What's it called? I mean, bringing this kind of topic up because it's a challenging thing, to meet suffering and compassion. It's like they're contradictory, but yet they are aligned in a lot of ways. And I appreciate you reframing the compassion because I guess I heard it differently. But suffering is going to be there because it's innate in humans. But compassion and how we, you know, incorporate it into our lives through at the suffer in moments of suffering, is vital. It's very important. And so it's a good topic, that, that really is, challenged my thinking. And obviously I said it's been through some traumatic times in my life, and we all have. But it's, you know, how, I've met things and been compassionate to myself, and I'm like, oh yeah, I did do that for myself, and did give myself a little grace.
Yeah, right on. Man. Well, I really appreciate your time and coming on with me and your busy schedule with everything
Yeah,
going on.
and finally got to
It's a
meet.
busy time of year, but
Yeah.
oh, and then that's my cue to get off there.
So
All right, man. Well, I'll see you later,
you're gonna
Paul.
stop recording? Here, let me talk to you for a second after recording.
Okay, yeah, of course.
Yeah, no.